Hello, everyone. Welcome to our wonderful gallery panel today that we're hosting today with Holly Hunt for the D&D Big Kickoff. And we're so excited to have you here joining us and these fantastic, fantastic women who I'm just utterly in awe of the beautiful crafts they create, the things that they make, the things that they conceive. It's truly amazing. You know, at Galerie Magazine, we are all about the conversions of art and design, but truly for us, craft is a part of that too. It's such an essential piece of the puzzle. In our new summer issue, which just came out days ago, we even featured the Loewe Craft Prize, which Loewe, a wonderful Spanish fashion company, hosts to honor people in the world of craft because they think it's so essential to fashion. And it's not just essential to fashion, it's essential to our homes too. And in the stories that we feature in every issue of Gallery, it's really a big part of what makes each of those houses so special. So I'm so happy to be here today with Lori Weitzner, Heidi Batteau, and Kate Hume, who really are innovators and people who create beautiful crafts and make the homes more beautiful where their products and their creations exist. So thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I thought to get us started, each of these wonderful women would tell us a little bit about their crafts, what they're creating. And Lori Weitzner, who was actually one of our gallery creative minds not so long ago because of her wonderful work in craft and the wallpaper, the fabric, like it's endless, Lori, what you create. So if you could tell us a little bit about you and what you make.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for that. That was a huge honor to be amongst in that pick and gallery was amazing. And I got so much feedback from that. So thank you. You know, I was thinking about it, and I always like to honor Jacqueline or Larson with the beginnings of when I really fell in love with artisans and working with artisan communities around the world. I worked for him very early on in my career, and he just opened up the world to me to understand how I could work with faraway places and even nearby places in the handmade way and have it still be viable commercially. So I put together some slides. I just did a few things, but I wanted to just take you through the different processes. And a lot of people say, oh, do you only work in the Philippines? No, we work in America. We work with many countries in Asia, like Thailand and the Philippines and Indonesia and Japan. We work in Europe and Belgium and France. It all depends on what we're doing, what materials we're using. India is a big place as well. We try and work with materials that are indigenous to that place and where artisan communities we can identify that will actually understand our needs, both aesthetically and also from a commercial standpoint. Interior designers are demanding. They want to know that color is going to match. They want to know, you know, when I give them a sample that 2 years later when they order it, it will look like that sample. Those are challenges, but we found and are able to identify these communities. So what we're looking at here is process. So much goes into it. In this case, this is Indonesia, and we do a lot of handmade wall coverings where we actually work with pulp and we paint and we strip and we cut and we weave paper and we weave bamboo and then we paper back it and it becomes a wall covering. So if you go to the next slide, you can see even more of how these things get put together and end up looking, you know, they go into fancy hotels and restaurants and yet they're made by hand by these communities. We don't just do these handmade and artisan communities, but I would say have about 65% of the Weitzner collection is done that way. The next slide will show you where we do a lot of handmade papers for the wall. In fact, I have something hanging behind me. These are all made from natural pulp. mulberry leaves, abaca, which is banana fiber, pina, which is pineapple fiber, and we mix it all in a giant vat, heat it up, and then create patterns with it, and also sometimes do color. So I am traveling a lot most of the time and get to work in these places. This is like 2 hours outside of Manila in the middle of nowhere, this beautiful open air facility with, you know, I'm thirsty in the middle of the day and they just get a coconut from the tree and feed it to me. It's really lovely. The next slide will show you, I can't remember the order I did these, but with the hand weaver. So my background, Jack Larson, my textile background is about print and weave. And we love working with hand weavers doing unique fibers. In this case, this is done in Nepal, and we work with hemp, which is very much abundant there, but we added glitter yarn, a little bit of glamour with the lurex that we bring in. And the mix of the two, the kind of matte and earthy with the glamour is beautiful. And if you move forward again, you'll see in the studio here where I am in New York City, we have what we call the White Box Sanctuary, and we have designers come and visit often. We're creating the original designs here. This is just an example of that. And these products are another offering, which are clean vinyls, because we also have to pay attention to what commercially is needed. So there are times where we'll do something in a way that's more performance oriented. The next slide will show you, again, inspiration and process of how we take pattern and we recreate it, in this case, in a wall covering. We're always bringing nature into our studio. We're urban and we're really nature deprived. So the more we can bring in here, the better. We get to travel sometimes, but of course, the last year and a half, it's been virtual. The next slide will show you, I threw in a little, even though this is mainly was wall covering, it's about artisan, and I just threw in this beautiful embroidered velvet. We have a whole textile line under the same name, Weitzner, also at Holly Hunt, very proud of. And embroidery is something I love. I have always loved, starting with Jack Larson days, and I work with embroiderers that by hand can do the most incredible work. They do jewelry, they embroider wall covering grass cloths for us, and they embroider interesting grounds like velvet. And yeah, keep going. This is just showing how much we spend on coloring things. A lot of time goes into that. And the next slide is, again, some handmade papers, this time Indonesia, where we tear paper and we gild it and have it dry in the sun. It's Lakta paper, which is indigenous there, and it looks beautiful on the wall. There's nothing like handmade in a space. And I think, is there a few more, or this is, I had to throw this in because this is sort of what we're famous for. When I first started Weitzner on my loan from the bank, I started with this wall covering, and it's truly recycled newspaper that we strip and weave and paper back. And I never thought we'd sell 1 yard, and it's been our best seller for 15 years. So there you go. And that's Will Ferrell's apartment, just as to be a name dropper a little bit on the right.
I thought it looked familiar. Sean Henderson did that, right?
Ooh, you know your stuff. Yes.
You do. Lori, that's fantastic. And I just love the artisan quality to everything, but that there seems to be in so many of them a connection to nature in some way. You're really pulling from what's there already and creating from that place. It's gorgeous.
Great. So I think that's my little presentation. Or a little bit, just a few more you can flip through, because I know there needs to be time for everyone. Oh, and this is
that's beautiful. So beautiful. I love this one.
Kate, I think you've used this a few times.
My favorite. I just think it's so clever. And
and this, just really quick, this was about, wait a minute, why does the wall covering have to cover the wall completely? Why can't the wall and the wall covering talk to each other? So that's what this is.
I love that.
Silk wall covering. No one should forget that silk is a natural, most beautiful fiber ever. And those are my beautiful hand weavers that do the most beautiful silk and abaca woven textile that becomes paper backed. And just in terms of working with them, they are weaving every day. They're part of a all women organization. There are 100 of them. They are being subsidized also by the government, and they have looms set up in homes, and they work together all day weaving the most beautiful products. And I go there and I show them what these amazing designers like Kate are doing with the product, with pictures, and they are glowing. They're so proud. So
Look how happy you are too in that photo. I love it.
I'm in my element there for sure. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And Heidi, it's so wonderful to see you. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here, and I love what you create and all of the special wall coverings that you design. So I'm excited for you to share some of that with our audience, and all the special techniques that you use.
Yeah, thank you for having me today. And it's a real joy to share this space with Kate and Lori. I'm very honored. And I believe that, can we have the slides just roll in the background? Would that be okay? Like every 30 seconds or so, we change them? Would that work? Okay. I believe that they have a true obsession with the handmade, as I do. And I would guess that most of the folks that are joining us today also have a true obsession with the handmade, hand painted, hand stitched, hand carved, and on and on. I'll search the ends of the earth to find that beautifully imperfect hand woven shoe. And why not? We're in the era of the internet, and it's so easy to work with and support small makers, even with small purchases you make every day. What a time it is to be a specifier. I believe that beauty is found in where the material and the idiosyncrasy meet the hand. And I come from a place that values this tremendously. Being raised around families that primarily supported themselves with craft, witnessing them consistently push back against the mass-produced food or object. This way of approaching the world continues to influence me today. About a decade ago, my partner, Christian, and I founded Assemblage with the intent of handcrafting the most luxurious wall covering available. This is still the intent today. That, along with creating well-paying, highly skilled jobs in rural America. Daily, 10 folks gather at the Assemblage studio located in the Ozark Mountains, and we make wall coverings with our hands. Nothing is automated. Every yard is a record of our group of hands coming together. All of our wall coverings start with a Marmarino plaster. It's also known as Venetian plaster. This is a marble dust lime-based plaster that we hand apply to a substrate using traditional Italian spatulas and blades. Tools like this have been applying plaster to walls for 1,000 years. We then adorn the surface of the plaster with various materials: ground micas, gold leaf, slices of abalone, mother of pearl. We hand mix inks, dye, and use metal powders. All of these kinds of materials are found throughout our papers. Our papers are generally then sealed with a mixture of carnauba and beeswax, which is then hand buffed to a warm perfection. Because of the alkalinity that's found in our lime plaster, our papers are naturally breathable and antimicrobial. And they can be used in areas that are moist, such as bathrooms. And this is highly unusual for a handmade paper. In fact, Venetian plaster is called just that because it's used extensively throughout Venice, the city of water. With all the water and all the canals, they need a finish that can stand up to that damp, moist environment, and Venetian plaster has proved to be that finish and that solution. Our aesthetic is modern. We love to push the traditional materials and use them in modern ways. Often the patterns you see in our work are created by the texture or record left by each hand movement. The movement is recorded in the wet plaster. That is where I believe the warmth sits and comes across, and why people often are drawn to our work. Our rich partnership with Holly Hunt continues to support my dream in true craft and helps me push back against the mass-produced daily. I'm very honored that the Assemblage line is part of the offering at the D&D. And please pop in and see the complete Assemblage line as well as all the other lines they have to offer. We're in great company there. So each of these slides are just showing our studio and what we're producing there daily. So does one person work on one piece, or are you all hands involved at the same time? We generally work in teams of 2. So when a job comes in, generally those 2 people see your project all the way through from start to finish. That's incredible.
Wow.
Amazing. Wow. I did not know that about Venetian plaster, actually. So that's makes sense.
It makes total sense. I've never thought about it like that. Yeah.
we talk about it and we market it that way, but we actually had a leak in our ceiling where some of our paper was installed, and there was mold in other parts of the room, and we pulled where the Venetian plaster wall covering was on the wall, and there was no mold on that wall. So it really works.
Right. It's not just utterly beautiful, it's actually functional. I love
Yes.
it.
Yeah. And now I think that's it. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, Heidi, for sharing that. And Kate, wonderful Kate, who has a gorgeous new book out this year, Elan, with all of her design projects. I want to hear more about you and how your world intersects with the world of craftsmanship.
Well, I came to the industry. I'm an interior designer, but I actually came into the industry via my glass making, which was something I did on a whim. I knew nothing whatsoever about making glass, but I found some really fantastic artisans who helped me make pieces I wanted to see, couldn't find and wanted to see. And basically one thing led to another. I started making and selling glass vessels, large scale pieces. And my husband was designing a range of furniture. And then one person came over to us one day and said, would you do my house? So that was we knew how to make things. So it seemed to be not too big a stretch, which was ridiculous if you think about it now. But what's been so gratuitous for me, or so wonderful for me, is I know a little bit about some parts of the craft industry, if you like, and I've got more and more involved in it. But it's such a privilege, in fact, to meet people like these ladies over the years and work with them and learn from them, actually, and all the other people that are sort of supply our industry, because I think it's just so unique how many people are in the industry that do the most extraordinary things, and the range of things available. You know, you can think it and someone will be able to do it, I always say. So in this picture, actually, we handcrafted the carpet from a small design that I'd seen in the Edward Fields catalog in the States. And then they blew it up and expanded it for me and created it in a much more luxury silk. We wanted a slightly deco feel, which I think we sort of achieved here. And I chose that image too, because of course the fireplace is bespoke, the library is bespoke. We try to do as many things as possible custom if we can, because we enjoy doing that. Even the fire, what are they called? The things either side in the fireplace? Fire dogs, I guess.
Irons? Fire?
Yeah, they're bronze and crystal, and we ordered them specially from Paul Belvoir in London. I mean, not every job allows you to do that, of course, but some projects, you know, you can really realize your dreams. So we really try to incorporate a mixture of including craft and including good design in every project that we do. This is just an illustration of a table that we make. I was really fascinated by Noguchi, actually, and his, you know, how he joins his timbers together. And I'd carried these images with me for many, many years. And then we started out with this idea, making panels that went behind beds, actually. And then developed tables that were made with the same technique. So it, you know, it just shows what our craftsmen in timber can do. We work almost entirely on the project work. We work nearly always with Dutch craftsmen because we're based in Amsterdam. So there's several timber factories that do our joinery. And again, you know, it can be a sketch on the back of a napkin, actually, quite literally at dinner with my husband and I. And then we actually end up, you know, having a chat with the makers. They make it, it's installed. I don't know, it's a very sort of organic process, as probably everybody else on this panel would agree.
And are there particular crafts that the Dutch are known for?
Well, that's a good question, actually. I mean, they're mostly known for what they do with flowers, really, which is a craft in itself. In terms of floral display, there's probably no one else on earth that can do the things they do with flowers. There was a booming furniture industry, but it's sadly really almost depleted, I would say. So I wouldn't, I mean, what they have is an extremely amazing education system for design. you know, through the college in Eindhoven, which is quite famous. So they have very innovative designers coming out of that college who are very used to working with modern materials, but very controversial in a sense. This is an illustration of a photograph of a group of my work. So really, I've been developing this look and feel in terms of glass since I started. Large scale, hefty, organic shapes that sometimes end up looking like vegetables. Sometimes they're just purely vessels. What I like to do most of all is play with layering of colors with transparency. So often I will group things, and I think that's part of my sort of general aesthetic anyway, in terms of how I even finish a house. It's a lot to do with groups and views and vignettes, and you sort of move through the story, if you like. So I started, as I said, doing this, and it seemed to be a sort of easy transition to a bigger three-dimensional space, actually. And I think glass itself is an amazing material. I don't like everything that's made in glass. I think it's quite a difficult material to be refined in a sense. But I love that it's a sort of fluid thing, and it's fast to make. It's extremely fast. So in a sense, you can't stand around. You know, you have to make decisions and make that piece. So it's quite dramatic, actually, as a material.
Those examples are just sublime, Kate.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
They really are.
And I actually included this slide. It's a kitchen of a project we did some years ago. And I wanted to talk about how something very utilitarian can have a different meaning depending on how you actually use it. So the floor in this case is the most standard small concrete tiles that you could probably imagine. I mean, they're made by a Belgian company, but similar tile is made by many different companies, I think. And we wanted to create a feeling of a textile. It was a nightmare to lay it, I have to say. Nightmare. And I think it cost 10 times more than anyone ever expected with the most generic material. But it's just to say that you can take something very, very standard and work something into it. And it's still one of my favorite things that we did. I just really enjoy seeing it and think, I can't believe we did that. So developing pattern out of something very simple, perhaps.
That's great.
And here and in most of the other images too, we designed all the furniture, I should think, most of the furniture that you see here. So, and again, I sort of quite like this utilitarian, simple way of making furniture feel livable somehow. I don't really like to use furniture that is too perfect. You know, I really like things that, even if they're brand new, I like things that look like they've had a bit of a life. So we try to use as many natural materials, and even if you sort of inadvertently damage something, it's not going to destroy the look and feel of the space. I don't like things that are too glossy. And in the background there, actually, this is the same building, actually. In the background, you see it's a wallpaper from another company, but I love embroidered wallpapers. I mean, going back to Laurie and what she's doing, I just love texture texturing walls, in fact. And the most straightforward, fabulous way to do it is to have wall coverings. And I think it just gives so much depth to the room. And I think when I was just watching the previous slides from everybody else, it just makes me so sort of like, what can I do with those materials? It's so inspiring.
So true.
Yeah. And here, more of our furniture, and then the joinery that we build. You know, we build our own doors for most projects. We design with great care all the finishings, the window reveals and so forth, all the architecture, actually. So it's such a layered thing. And I think what I love about this, and what this illustrates to me, is how important the craftsmen are in every studio or factory, because it's an amalgamation of all those people. A project really probably requires maybe 40 or 50 different crafts in the end, all crafts people in the end, all pulling together to deliver something, which is, such an exciting thing. And many of them we don't meet, we'll order something from another company, but this is more of our furniture. I had a very sort of bit of a passion for putting nail heads in things. Why, I have no idea, but it started out in my own house. I was asking our cabinet makers to put nail heads in the headboard. we ended up creating these chests for this bedroom that are based on sea chests, and we just studied the detailing with nail heads. More embroidered wallpaper, big love, and then nice hemp, or I think it's a hemp rug actually from LET. Simple and very effective in this seaside bedroom. And that's the other view. So that shows where I started out with the headboards, the zigzag.
That's so dreamy. That's beautiful.
This is a really, it's a basement space with very limited daylight. And I was so certain that I wanted to make it feel fabulous so that people used it, because I'd seen in other houses in the area, this is in Germany, that nobody ever went to the basement. So I thought, well, I have to make it wonderful. It's got to have layers and layers and layers to make it feel alluring. And apparently they love it. So that's good news. This is actually in the same house. It's a beautiful old whalers cottage on the island of Sylt. And this is just showing how we sort of would choose to mix fabrics. I gather, I collect ceramics from wherever I am. The ones on the table are actually from Bruno Gamboni in Italy, who was a ceramicist. I think he's still alive. Wonderful pieces if you can get hold of them. And then the lamp is a plaster lamp from Rosuniaki in London. And I love the sort of hand-blocked fabrics, the mix of pattern, the colors. So I think it's a joy that we have all those resources actually at our fingertips, and we can ask, all these specific people, as I said, to deliver something wonderful. That's my table in my house in Holland. So I'm crazy about ceramics, as anyone that knows me would know. And anything from the most simple utilitarian cup to quite grandiose things. And I've collected, I think it's because I make glass actually, that I understand how to make a vessel, but I cannot make ceramics. I've never tried, but I just don't think I could compete with the beauty of things that are out there. So I'm always looking for great pieces that I can either use for my clients or use at my own space, at my own home. So this is just a little snap of my coffee table, in fact. And that's our office in Amsterdam, it's looking very clean here, I must say. Just to show you again, I mean, a mixture of wallpaper and sculpture and glass and antique pieces. We found the table base in Los Angeles years and years ago, and we had these ram heads recast in bronze, and then we made a table in sort of rough oak to show all our treasures in the office. And I think it's just my sort of interest in keeping on layering this stuff. I just love it. And I've got a lot of pictures of my own home actually, but it does really speak about who I am, I think. So this is the same room where the coffee table is, obviously. And again, more wallpaper. Again, the cupboards with the nailhead details, and then some vintage pieces, fabrics that we've collected over the years. I tend to sort of gather up fabric and then just make my own pillows if I can. And it just sort of speaks to me. I think it's my whole aesthetic approach to interior design is mixing and making it look personal for people, making it look like this is their story. And I think the craft element that we're talking about today really helps to do that.
Definitely. All right. Well, I'd love to open it up to some questions that all of us can talk about together, and how craft plays a part in your lives and what you do, and the importance of artisanry. And I'm just curious to know from each of you, what are some of the crafts that you admire most throughout history? And are there any particular examples that you love to visit in museums, or master craftsmen throughout the ages that you can't help but pick up a book about? Lori, what about you?
Well, I mean, obviously, like there's a million answers to that, but when you say museums, like the first two that popped in my head is every time I'm in London, I have to go to the Victoria Albert Museum. Mm-hmm. They just have like so much to look at that I could derive inspiration from. That's not specific textile, that's everything. I love it. I also love the smell, and it's kind of old and a little bit not pristine, like, you know, you expect from a museum. There's something about it. I really like it there. Like, I'd like to be locked in there all night. And then the other museum that comes to mind is in Jaipur. So as I said, I go to India a lot, and in Jaipur, there's a textile museum, a Noki museum, I think it's called, and it's all about block printing. And it's so beautiful. They show the clothes, and then you walk up these old staircases and you see more, and then you see a guy showing you how to block print and carve the block. And it's beautiful. So those would be the two that would pop in my head right away.
Oh, that's amazing. It reminds me of, I went to that textile museum in Lyon. I don't know if you've ever been. So gorgeous. And like, just looking at the history and the work and the knowledge that has gone into fabric for so long is captivating.
I wish that interior designers could go and understand all that goes into it. I mean, some do, of course, but it's amazing what actually goes into making these products that people don't even really think about. So I love these museums that show process.
Mm-hmm. They're really fascinating ones, and they're sometimes so off the beaten path. They're wonderful discoveries.
Yeah.
And Heidi, what about for you? Are there any particular crafts that you've always sort of loved? And
all handmade things. I love everything to be handmade. I get everything in my life to be handmade. That I would appreciate that. But I love the Noguchi Museum in Queens. So it's one of my very favorites. And I know Kate mentioned Noguchi previously, and it's anytime you're there, go and walk around. It's just beautiful. It's also very serene, you know, being so close to the city and it feels far away. And I also agree, the Victoria Albert Museum in London is just you have to go anytime you're there. So those would be the places that I would choose. And if I go to India, I'm going to the museum that Lori talked about, because that sounds amazing.
Totally amazing. Totally. And Kate?
Yeah, V&A, of course, for me.
Yeah.
I quite like visiting museums that are actually people's houses. So one of my favorites is the Villa Necchi in Milan,
Of
which
course.
is well known to design people, I think. But just, it was, you know, this crazy architectural vision, and every little detail is so interesting. I love the idea of that, you know, that everything's taken care of, from the door handle to the pillow to the sofa to the, I don't know, the floor tiles, how the paintings are hung, you know.
And at the Villa Necchi too, they have that great, I love that sort of back of house room with all the china, with all of their Ginori china that was special to the family, and then drawer after drawer of linens that are just
Hermes scarves with their names on them.
So sublime.
With their names, with the girls' names on them. And glass drawers. Yeah, I love the dressing room. I thought the dressing room. And the bathrooms are so amazing. I mean, and it was a what's the word? It was a very modern house when it was built. You know, had air conditioning and, you know, all sorts of things that no one ever had before. So that was super interesting. And I would say I sort of stumble into things, small places in small towns, funnily enough, that you just go, oh, this is here. You know, so there's a couple of nice places in Toulouse. There's a lovely little museum of ceramics, which of course I love, about 20 minutes from here, which is, you know, puts beautiful shows on every year. And I tend to sort of try and find something where near to where I am, and sort of pop in and out. That's my favorite thing to do.
Oh, that's great. And I feel like over, you know, the last several years, really people have become more and more enamored and looking for the handmade, looking for the artisan. Have you seen this too? How have you been seeing that need and want develop, and what interior designers and their clients are asking for? And then also, has it even, I think, sort of gone even farther, that people wanted in the last year, you know, staying at home so much and wanting to touch things and see things that have character and where you can see the hand. Kate, are your clients asking for that more?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I've been a real champion of it for about sort of 10 years. I could really see that coming, because I'd done actually quite a lot of very sort of fancy houses, and I really wanted to try and do things that were a little bit more grounded, if you like. And I've really I love resourcing craftspeople to do things for us. So I think it's really a zeitgeist thing. It's in everything. It's in clothing. You know, I was actually looking online for clothes the other day, and everything is laid out in this kind of sort of, they look like children's clothes, linen, beautiful children's clothes, but for adults. But there's a craft element to that. There's a sort of weird vibe there, I think. It's coming into everything we touch. And I think it makes your space so much more personal. And I don't think it's a very difficult thing to find good craft. You know, there's a lot of interesting people making great things all over the place, actually, in every small community. So, and there always has been, you know, so there's also the junk market side of my life, which is huge. You know, I just love to do that. And actually, that's a really funny thing about living here in France, where I am at the moment, is there was an enormous amount of utilitarian product made through the centuries, and that rotates through the markets. So whether it's a dustpan and brush even, or a beautiful pot that would have been used on a fireplace in the 17th century. I mean, there's just great stuff out there. Simple things that were made for daily use, but crafted beautifully.
Right.
And, that's such a treat, I think. Probably we see maybe a bit more of that in Europe and Asia, but it's a pleasure. I get such a thrill. I mean, I'll get up really early to go to the markets to find my stuff.
That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah.
Very envious of that.
Right? Yeah, I would get up really early too, Kate.
And I am
like on the internet looking for, you know.
Yeah. And Heidi, how about with what your clients are asking for and the orders that you're seeing coming in through Holly Hunt? You know, what do you see from what the consumer wants and design for giving them?
Our consumer definitely comes to us for the handmade, and that's what they want to see is the hand. But I think in general, the market has been there, and it's now easier to find those producers than it was in the past. You know, and even mass-produced things are made by hand. Actually, when you go to the factories and see them, there is a person there actually making it. And I think allowing that hand to be seen and not necessarily hiding the hand is what we're seeing more in fashion and, you know, in more mass-produced products. And I think we want to see a humanistic quality. We want to know a human was involved in making it, you know.
Yeah. And how about the use of your products? So is it something that used to just be in the entryway or a special place, and now you're seeing people sort of want to use it in more and more spaces?
I mean, that is definitely happening. And we, you know, we're very lucky. We've worked on some very luxury, large, expensive jobs where people do have the budget. But, you know, on the daily, we're seeing feature walls and hotels and, you know, the presidential suites. But we're definitely seeing the orders increase. So whether that's possibly budget increases or, you know, just people making the budget for it, you know, maybe getting it from somewhere else. So, yeah.
And how about for you, Lori? Where do you?
Yes, we are. I mean, I know that people generally, designers come to us for the handmade that we've been doing since I started Weitzner, but I definitely have seen, and because we have other things too, a huge increase in the last year, specifically of our handmade papers, which I find really interesting. And I don't think it's surprising, because I think it's to what you said, Jackie, which is people are longing for that perfectly imperfect, soulful, unique thing they can bring to their home. And they're tired of the homogeny that is what you see out of catalogs and so forth. And if you can just do something to bring in that aspect. But I also think a reason why we're seeing a big increase is there's whole movement towards sustainability. I like, yes, the materials are sustainable and sometimes recyclable, but even more than that, I like to talk to the point of cultural sustainability. And people really care that we are able to help communities sustain their livelihood by using their craft instead of having to become bus drivers or waiters, that they actually are making a living by doing these beautiful products. And I think that full circle story really resonates with our design community.
Yeah. And for the last year or so, how has, the pandemic sort of changed your creative process for the good or bad, or the learning process of it? And, how have you had to just sort of rethink creativity or reimagine your techniques and what you do?
I'll jump in first just to continue with that. You saw how happy I was in that picture with those weavers, and I've been really missing that a lot.
Sure.
And you can do Zoom, and only to a certain extent, and just to be able to hug them again and to actually look at the yarn and touch it and play with it with them, I'm missing. And so it's been hard. But the challenges are good because they make you and force you to think in a new way, in a different way. And we've come up with some ideas we might not have come up with because of the challenges. So.
Yeah, I'll second that. I mean, we just recently installed a house, and the main sort of installation day here in France, the trucks coming in and everything, people were elated. The team were elated. We were together. It was not my usual team, actually, because there were so many restrictions getting people up and down. But I don't know, Laurie follows me on Instagram, so she probably knows this, but I asked a friend of mine to cater, and we had the most amazing lunches I've ever had on a project. I never photograph food, but I was just so like, this is amazing. We're together, we can sit down, have lunch, work really hard, talk about what we've all been through. It was wonderful. So that
we all want to work for you, Kate.
Yeah.
Come to the market.
Get up early, have a great lunch.
Look for the perfect item.
We're really under very much pressure. It's really, well, not often. I think actually the flying has taken that out of the equation, because we're not flying. And all the sort of stress of having to be somewhere on time, it's not nearly as bad. And even the clients have been very like, oh, if it comes tomorrow, it'll be okay. Unusual.
Right.
Everybody seems to understand we're in this, from my point of view anyway. And then it's kind of just been a sort of eye-opener, I think, in general, about how people want to live. And I was going to just mention, the idea of the wall coverings and the layering and the cocooning. We all use that word, and we all want to make our homes more and more and more gorgeous. But you can't take wallpaper with you. That really, really makes me cry, because I've got such nice.
But we like that because it means you have to buy.
Yeah, that's right. That's just
It makes me cry. Oh my gosh, it's the one thing that you think, oh God, what do I do if I leave?
yeah.
And how's it affected your creative process, Heidi?
We kept going because we're at the factory, so not a lot changed there for us, but getting to travel and see clients and go to, any various places in the world to get inspiration. I did miss that a lot, but it did give us more of a chance to be in the studio and play with materials more. So we did have a little bit more of a chance to play, where usually we have to really buckle down and say, okay, we're going to play this week and come up with new things. And we had a little bit more time to do that. So
should we see some exciting new things coming out of this?
Hopefully very soon. Yes. Yeah.
That's fun to look forward to. And I have some questions that are coming in from the audience too, and anyone who's watching, please feel free to ask questions as well. This first one says, hi ladies, love the panel. When designing new products, do you take existing trends into account, or are you always trying to set new trends with your work? Who wants to dive in first?
I think that's a delicate balance. I think you have to do both. Take it into account, but also if you follow a trend, wall covering is such a long game. You don't order it today and have it today. This is, something that you think about. You order it in 2 years, maybe, you specify it, and maybe in 2 years it goes in. So I think it's important that wall covering is not trend setting, but it's classic and can last a long time. People don't change it constantly.
I wrote a book called Ode to Color, and it's all about color and these color worlds. And I always get asked this question about, you know, trend of color and what's going to be the new color for next year and what's the paint color of the year and all of that. And I approach it very differently, and I say, it's not about color trends, it's about what works for you. And color is very personal. And I think the same is about design. It's personal and it's what you need. And maybe you need something that's more energizing, and so you would design a different, or be attracted to a different type of product and color versus something more calming versus something more rooted in nature, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't really think very much about trend as much as I think about an offering that will support people's emotional needs, if that makes sense.
Well, I love that book, Lori. It's amazing, and for anyone watching, it's a great resource and read. And is your color quiz.
Yeah, yes. I have a color quiz that 18,000 people have taken already. And it's again about what colors are right for you in your interiors, not necessarily what you like, but what you may need. And it's just to begin a dialogue of how color can really enhance and help you in your well-being. And so it's just a conversation starter, but I will say that pre-COVID, I had analytics, and post-COVID, and it's dramatically changed what color will become most popular. Yeah. And I don't know if for you guys, like, you're seeing different things selling than they were, or for you, Kate, you know, interiors that people are longing for certain colors or certain types of things differently, but certainly on the color side, there's been a pretty dramatic shift.
And that's earthier. Is that what you're seeing? I mean, I'm seeing much more natural.
Absolutely.
Like rusty, linen-y, neutrals.
Comforting color.
Less gray, you know, because that would be sort of go-to background color, I guess, but really earth, you know. And that I saw when I first started making glass. I did a lot of really quite strong colors like fuchsia and purple, and layered those. And I sort of wouldn't dream of doing that now. You know,
and to your point, people want to feel more connected to nature now, because nature is a healer, and we all need more healing right now. And I think that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, it's something that it seeps through. So in answer to the question from the audience, I would say you don't know that you're being influenced by what's happening, but you're influenced by everything you see and do. So it sort of seeps into you. I try not to get influenced by what I see on social media, but one can't really help it. But I want to stay, and I think if you talk about craft, and all of you, you stay with your story, don't you? You know, you're not like changing into a whole other story of how you approach something. You stay with your story. So that's your look, and you push it and you develop it and you tweak it and you expand or contract it, because that is the core of our talent, the thing that we do best, if you like. So you stay strong in the thing that you're doing, but that moves slightly in terms of the trends.
Yeah.
This has been such a wonderful talk. It makes me want to really surround myself with even more handmade things, and to wallpaper every square inch of the space I live in with something really fabulous, and put nail heads everywhere. So thank you to our wonderful panelists, Lori and Kate and Heidi. What you do is such an inspiration. It's so beautiful. And your commitment to craft is really honorable. So thank you. And then I'd also like to thank Holly Hunt for being a part of this panel today, as well as the D&D building, which we can't wait to be back in person and having panels soon. But this is pretty wonderful until we get there. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.